Hello, everybody. My name is Jacob Shanker, and welcome to the Flight Podcast.
Shut up and sit down.
Well, it's been a very hectic week. I know a lot of people have been on break, myself included, and my break is now just ending. I'm gonna go back to reality, go back to the real world things, which is unfortunate. But still a little jealous though. Andrew is still living it up in Florida, going to the beach all the time, the pool, all that stuff. So he's a very lucky man. But you guys are lucky because you have me now. It's just me, the one and only, the GOAT. That's right. But for today's episode, I'm going to be diving into my reactions to the All-Star starters, the NBA All-Star starters that were announced, and who I think are going to be picked as the reserves, and my thoughts around that whole thing. So let's start off with why don't I start off with the West? As the starters that were picked, I know it was very controversial what was going on there. So the front court, I'll start with that. It was Jokic, Kawhi Leonard, and LeBron James. 100% agree with that. There's nothing I would change about that. I mean, if you have a problem with that, are you crazy? Like, really? Um, but going on to the backcourt, that was the problem that was going on. You see, Steph Curry got straight into the All-Star starters, which again, 100% agree with. I think he's an MVP candidate. He has been phenomenal this season for the Warriors, pretty much leading that team because there's really not that much, especially without Clay this season. So he's really been doing well. But the other starter that was picked was Luka Doncic. And I'm not too happy that it was him. Um, the way the voting, I'll tell you about the voting breakdown. So it was between three categories: the fan voting, the player voting, and the media voting. The fan voting got a 50% stake in all of it. The player voting got a 25%, and so did the media voting, which is what led to why it was Zach LaVine, because out of all the guards, that's why it was Luka Doncic. Because out of all the guards, Luka Doncic got second in fan voting, third in player voting, and third in media voting. But the reason I don't think it should be him, and the reason I pick someone else, is I pick Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard was third in fan voting, second in player, and second in media voting. So I don't understand why they chose Luka. I understand that they have that if it's a tiebreaker, it goes to whatever the fan voting was, but that should just not make that it does not make sense whatsoever. I mean, obviously, I know this is a fan's game, and it's a game for all of us to be able to watch and enjoy it, but the fan voting is not 100% accurate. Last year, Taco Fall was in like the top 10 for forwards. This year, Alex Caruso was top 10 for guards in the West. Like, they're not accurate at all. You're telling me that if Alex Caruso got there, Alex Caruso could have a chance at being in the All-Star, even being a starter? No, that should not be it. Damian Lillard, the only thing that Luka is beating Damian is rebounds and assists. Actually, no, no, he's beating him in rebounds and assists. So why was he chosen? Because Dame's putting up more points. Dame's playing better defense. Dame is doing better in the shooting wise. He's also one of the most clutch players in the NBA right now, if not the most clutch player this season. He is number one in every single clutch category there is. He's number one. And the fact that he has been able to carry this Trailblazers team to the fourth and fifth seed and going back and forth between the Suns and them is phenomenal. It's unbelievable the talent that he has and the things that he can do, especially without CJ McCollum and without Yusuf Nurkic. So it is really tough for him to do this. And the fact that he can do this is remarkable. So it's a disgrace that Damian Lillard was not picked as a starter. I understand why Luca was picked, but still, come on. You cannot tell me that it should not be Dame, especially for the man that is an MVP candidate himself. And if we're looking at Luka Doncic, I know I had him as an MVP candidate, but I don't have him anymore. I don't even have him in the top 10 players this year. Not at all. Not even top 15, maybe top 20. I mean, he has been one of the biggest. I've never seen a downfall on a player. I mean, sorry, not a downfall, but I've never seen such a hype up on a player and then it just go bad. I mean, I know a lot of people thought that, oh, Luka's going to be MVP. The Mavs are going to be a top 3 team in the league. They're not even in playoff contention. Like, are you kidding me? All right, but that's my little rant against the starters. But I'll go into the East. Let's go to the East starters before I talk about the reserves. Um, Pretty much most of them I agree with. There was besides the shooting guard position, which I'm a little iffy about, but I understand why it was chosen. But I'll tell you the rest. The front court was Joel Embiid, Kevin Durant, and Giannis. Again, perfectly chosen. Nothing out of place. Great picks. Then for the backcourt, it was Kyrie Irving. Again, 100% agree. If you think that it should be anybody else, you're crazy. Because, in my opinion, Kyrie Irving is the third best point guard in the league, right behind Dame and Steph. Um, and for the other position for the backcourt, it was Bradley Beal. Okay. The reason I was a little unsure about Bradley Beal is because I feel like it's a false image that people are looking at. I understand he is a monster. I'm not discrediting the man that he is, right? He's leading in points per game this year, right? With 33 points per game. He's shooting pretty good. I mean, just it's really just the points, right? The rebounds, meh. He's not really getting the assists. His defense is actually better than the average player. The shooting, I said before, it's fine. So he's efficient, like he's above the average player efficient, and he's scoring well. I mean, he's not my top choice, but I'm not entirely as mad with that pick, right? I mean, the other player that I would say that I would rather have is James Harden because I think all around it's just he's been playing better. If I would rather have Bradley Beal or James Harden, I'm picking James Harden because he's doing pretty much everything else better, right? He's shooting better. He's getting the assists, the rebounds. The only thing that he's not doing better is the scoring, which is obvious because he's still playing as the second option scorer, but he's still has the third most points on his team, which is still a lot. 24.4 points. Don't get me wrong, it's still a lot of points. But I think when you look at which player is better, I think I'd rather have a player that is better overall than a player that is really good in one specific thing. But again, I'm not entirely mad that Bradley Beal was chosen. I think I'm still happy that he's making the All Star team this year since he was been snubbed in all these years. So I think it's great. Now I'll go on to the West reserves as the East one is very tough to decide, and it was extremely tough. But I've come down to it. But I'm going to start with the West. Obviously, besides the players that were mentioned, um, obviously for the starters, I think it's obvious that I think Damian Lillard should be there. I don't need to explain myself more. I already talked about it. The next player is Paul George, one of the best players in the league. He is one of the best on-ball defenders in the league. He can do everything. The way that he is going, he may join the 50-40-90 club. So there's no real flaw to his game this year. There's nothing that I can tell you, yeah, he needs to work on this. I mean, he's just a phenomenal player. He has definitely surprised me because compared to last year, I think he's been so much better. I think the Clippers have been different this year, and it's weird because they lost players, right? They lost their head coach. They lost Montrezl excuse me, they lost Montrezl Harrell. So it just confuses me because I thought they would do worse, but they're still doing really well. So Paul George is that player. The next is Anthony Davis, right? I know that, okay, on the offensive end, he's done much worse. And I mean much worse. But on the defensive end, this is the best defensive year that Anthony Davis has ever had. And I think he's the front runner for Defensive Player of the Year. He's averaging over a steal and almost 2 blocks, and his defensive rating is 101, which is nuts. I'm pretty sure he's tied with Rudy Gobert right now for defensive rating at 101, but he has been so good being able to guard everybody and doing it very well. He's one of the players that really he can guard everybody. The only player that I think he may not be able to guard is Kevin Durant because KD is just nuts. He's a 7 foot. He's taller than Anthony Davis. He's a foot taller than him. So I mean that's going to put on it, especially with his deep score shooting. But Anthony Davis should 100% make it. Let alone him not really scoring as much or not even just scoring efficiently. He still deserves to make it. So that's 3 already. The next one I gotta say, Chris Paul. I think he's been extremely underrated. And I think he 100% deserves a spot. He has done so well for the Suns. He has been able to get them from they may make the playoffs, they may not make the playoffs, to now a top 5 team in the West, which is extremely tough since the West is obviously tougher than the East, right? They went from the 9th seed, 10th seed last year to now they're the 4th seed. Like, how does the man do it? He can completely change a franchise into being a winning team, which is unbelievable. He also can do everything, right? He's not scoring as much right now, but I'm not surprised he's not scoring as much because he's got someone named Devin Booker. He also has Mikal Bridges, who has been scoring much more this year and has been doing better this year. So Chris Paul deserves to be in there. That's four. Fifth person I'm saying is Rudy Gobert. I think that he has been one of the best bigs in the league. I still do not think that he deserved all that money. Not at all. Right? He's not a Joel Embiid. He's not a Jokic in terms of bigs, right? He does not deserve all that money. But he deserves to be in the All-Star game. He's one of the leaders in rebounds. He's one of the best defense players. He's one of the players that you cannot guard him in the paint, right? He has been a monster and has been one of the reasons that the Jazz are the number 1 team in the league. Him and Donovan Mitchell are the reason, and that leads me to my next player, Donovan Mitchell, number 6. I mean, he has been so good, so good. Again, he continues to get better and better each year as his season progresses. I mean, watching him last year in the playoffs be extremely dominant, having a really sad first round exit, but that's not his fault. It was everyone around him. But this year, him showing out, him getting his team together, them succeeding, and really playing team basketball, playing what basketball should be, a team sport. Because you look at other guys in other teams, and they play like it's just them, right? It's just them there, so they got to try and win for themselves, right? Like when James Harden was on the Rockets, I thought he was a very selfish player, right? You look at him now on the Nets, he's playing team basketball because he's playing more to win. Donovan Mitchell's playing to win. He's getting everyone on the team in the game. So that is 6 players. We got Dame, Anthony Davis, Rudy Gobert, Chris Paul, Donovan Mitchell, Paul George, and the final player that I will say, this was tough. I'm going to say it was tough. I'm going to tell you the snubs I had after really quickly, but Zion Williamson. I think Zion deserves to make it. I still think he's a little overhyped, but he has gotten better last year. He has been able to improve his game, both offensively, defensively. He's been a monster. His dunking abilities has been unbelievable. I would love to see him in the dunk contest this year, if it even happens. He's just been a great player for the Pelicans. He's going to obviously be the franchise player for the Pelicans. But the one problem with that team though is they need to just be more consistent as a team. Zion's a great player. Brandon Ingram's a great player. Lonzo Ball. They have all this talent, but yet they can't succeed with all of it. And why is that? Genuinely, why is that? But I think Zion deserves that last spot. But the remaining players that I had as picks for snubs is DeMar DeRozan. I think I was considering him very strongly to make it. I think he's an extremely underrated player. He's one of those players that is very good offensively. His defense is fine. His defense is not that good, but he's great offensively. He's great. He's very efficient. He's been able to be the leader for the Spurs to get them to a playoff contention, and he has been continuing to do well his entire career. The next player is Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. It's not his year. It's nothing that I can say about it. He just needs to get better overall, but it's just not his year. I think it's too much talent, but in next year, 2 years, he's going to get on a roll and being able to make the All-Star game and really being a top player in the league because he has that potential. He's the best player on the Thunder. He just needs to grow more. The next player is Brandon Ingram. Um, he just didn't have enough for me, right? He did very well last year. I understand why he's not doing as well this year, but it was just not enough, right? I mean, if you look at, I think he has been putting up all-star numbers, but he's I can't put him ahead of all these players. I think Zion has been better than him, right? I think Chris Paul's been better. I think Rudy Gobert, Dame, Paul George, all these players that I mentioned, I think they've been better than him. And the last two players comes from the Suns, as I mentioned, Devin Booker and DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton, I think, has been underrated, but he's just not good enough to make the All-Star game. I'm sorry. He's a great center. He's a great player for the Suns, but he's not good enough. And the last player who I think is extremely overrated, if he makes it, which I have a feeling he will, but I'm going to be upset because I do not think he should make it whatsoever, is Devin Booker. I think Devin Booker is one of the most overrated players in the league right now. I think he's a great scorer. That's it. Right? This is the lowest scoring year he's had in the past 2-3 years. He needs to do more. I mean, there's nothing more that I can say. He needs to be more efficient. He needs to get more assists, more rebounds, play better defense. He can't let Chris Paul do everything. He needs to try and take some things into his own hands. Let's go on to the East. The East reserves, right? I'm just going to list it off rapid fire because I know some of it may cause a little bit of controversy, but I'm going to give a little reasoning behind each one. Now, I mentioned all the guys before. I mean, well, James Harden, he's not a starter, but he 100% should make it. Jason Tatum, a great player. I feel like I don't need to explain myself. Jaylen Brown, same thing. He was considered a starter, and he's another player that I think should have been considered a starter as well. But I feel like he just didn't have enough really to make it. But I'm still happy that he was considered. Domantas Sabonis, he's a phenomenal player. I mean, he is one of the reasons that the Pacers are succeeding. He can do everything, and he can do it successfully. This one I feel like is a bit surprising for some people because I haven't heard many people say it, but Bam Adebayo, I think, has been underrated this year. He's been worse than last year, but he's still been doing well. His offense, he's been doing as much as he can. He's been efficient. He's been playing really good defense. So why should he not make it? Right? He should make it. Right? So we got James Harden, Bam Adebayo, Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, Sabonis. Next player is Zach LaVine. Get Zach LaVine into the All-Star game, please. Every single year, he's one of the players that we've seen the progression. We've seen him how amazing he's been as a player with the Bulls each and every year. I thought he should have made it last year, but he needs to get it this year. And the final player that I am going to say is Julius Randle. I mean, I think that he has been doing very well, very, very well for the Knicks. I did not expect him to do this well. I mean, the man has been able to utilize this team and make them one of the best defensive teams in the league, which is extremely surprising. He's been able to do everything really well. I mean, I think one of the, I mean, he doesn't really have a big flaw in his game. That's the thing. He could do so many things so well. So I got to commend him for it. So Julius Randle is the last guy I got on the reserves. Um, but the snubs that I got to say, one player is Ben Simmons. He just didn't have enough this year overall. He's got to start scoring more. He's gotta. I mean, it's not going to be enough anymore to make it because you've got so many players, so many big time players that are making it into the All Star game and they're scoring. Right, out of all the players I listed off that I think should make it in the East, including the reserves and the starters, the lowest scoring one is Bam Adebayo with 19.6 points. Ben Simmons has 15.2. That's not going to cut it. I don't care if you can get the assists, the rebounds, the steals. You got to do more. Next player, which saddens me, is Vucevic. Again, he's one of those players that just is right there, but just does not. He just does not have enough. Next one is Jimmy Butler. I feel like if the All Star, if he was playing more, if he didn't miss so many games, he probably could have made it because he's doing better. But because of that, because he missed so many games, and also because his averages were just lowering, but now he's starting to get into a groove. He just can't make it. I'm sorry. Um, the final snub that I put is Trae Young. Trae Young should not make the All Star game. He is like Devin Booker. He's the Devin Booker of the East. Do not put this man in the All Star game. His score, okay, he can score. He can get the assists. He plays terrible defense. He is inefficient. Do not put this man in the game. He has a lot of turnovers. I'm looking at a list right now of all the players that I named from the West and from the East. He has the most turnovers with 4.3. The only other player that comes close to him is James Harden with 4.2. But that's James Harden. James Harden can do other things. Trae Young can do some, he can score and pass, but he is very inefficient. He takes so many shots. Again, I feel like he's going to make it, which saddens me, but we're going to see how this all comes down. Thanks for listening, everyone. Feel free to comment down below what your thoughts have been on my reactions to the All-Star starters and what your thoughts were on my picks for the reserves. Tune into the next episode on Friday, where hopefully Andrew will join us back. See you guys next time.